Good morning, everyone. This is Dana Wilson with the Keller Williams Real Estate East Bay office in the East Bay, Walnut Creek, and Savvy Seniors Living Seminar Series host and moderator. And we welcome you to our April session. And wow, I am so excited. Today's topic is something that is, I think, at the heart and core of really what we do when we're working with our older homeowners and their family members and caregivers. This is the sticking point. So, first of all, I want to remind the newbies that this is an ongoing series, and we are in our fourth full year. 4 years, month after month, we've been bringing different senior housing related topics to the forefront, and thank goodness we have local seasoned experts on all the topics we present, because I certainly am not an expert in everything. And we are hoping that possibly later in 2021, we might be able to meet once again in person back at the Lafayette Library Community Hall. So stay tuned. We'll see how that pans out for the rest of the year. But I'm just going to get to the reason why we do this, and that is to educate, inform, empower, and encourage the folks in our communities that are trying to figure out what successful living looks like. And sometimes that includes a move. And so today's topic is all about the emotions of letting go. And we're primarily focused on stuff. Why do we keep hold so tight of all this stuff? But it goes a little deeper than that, and we'll be jumping into that in a minute. But really, why do we all collect, and listen, I'm guilty as the rest of you. Why do we collect all this stuff? We hang on to it, things that maybe don't even serve us any longer. Do you have items from your parents, your grandparents, your great aunt, sitting in the attic, the garage, cluttering up your drawers and closets? Are you using all these things? I mean, we're going to get real today. We want to downsize and get organized, but why haven't we done it? At the beginning of the shelter in place a year ago, so many people told me, I'm going to spend this time clearing out the garage. Checked in with them 9 months later, hasn't happened. 12 months later, nope, hasn't happened. So if you're ready to see the light at the end of that cluttered tunnel, then you are in the right place today. This is going to be great. So we're going to learn the why, the how, the what of it all. And so get ready to clear up that space in your home, in your mind, and in your life for greater things that are going to bring you joy in 2021. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves. So Trina, why don't you say good morning and tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Trina Swerdlow, and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist in private practice for 15 years. I'm also the author of Stress Reduction Journal, Meditate and Journal Your Way to Better Health. So I help people really balance joys and sorrows and help them move through major life transitions. And I love my work.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. Dr. Arbor or Patrick, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Patrick Arbor, and I'm very pleased to be here with you, Dana, and Trina. It feels really like a team, and I like that kind of approach. And I am the founder of the Friendship Line, the 24-hour both hotline and warm line that has been in operation not only in California, but across the country since 1973. So we're going to be celebrating our 48th year. And I'm also the founder and director of our Traumatic Loss Grief Services. My office is at Institute on Aging in San Francisco. And again, I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, both of you, for your time and your wisdom today. Really, this is all about downsizing and why people move. And, you know, there's three different types of moves. There's the lifestyle move where you want to be nearer to family and friends. Maybe you're moving to a resort community, you're moving for better climate, playing a little more golf, being able to travel more often and not being burdened by that large home and large yard to take care of. There's the anticipatory move where you're planning for your future and you're anticipating where you might want and need to be for better medical care, where you'll be close to a supportive, you know, family, friends, maybe availability of social, physical, even nutritional support. And then lastly, the crisis move, which is where you've sort of waited till the very, very end. Your options have become a little bit limited. And sometimes this move is associated with a physical or cognitive decline. But in all these cases, guess what? There's going to be a sorting of household items in every case. And so we are going to jump into some discussion with Patrick now about what the impact is on us when we're faced with a move. Patrick, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when we're faced with a move, any kind of change, and I'm sure Trina's going to talk about this a little bit more in her spot, but right then we are in a position of either facing the reality of the move, what we need to do, or resisting it. And I just thought it would be good to give a definition of letting go that I use, and this is from Melody Beatty. And she says, letting go means we stop trying to force outcomes. It means we give up resistance to the way things are. It means we stop trying to do the impossible and focus instead on what is possible, which usually means taking care of ourselves first. And that's what I think is often missing, you know, when we're faced with a move, any one of those three reasons. And so what's going to come up are emotions, you know, especially if you've lived in your space, your home, your condo, whatever, for, you know, 50 or 60 years, you raised your children there. One woman I was working with was faced with a move because her husband didn't feel he could manage the upkeep on their beautiful house out here in the avenues in San Francisco. And it was 4 bedrooms. It was, you know, upstairs, downstairs. So there were a lot of steps. And he wanted to move into a more of an assisted living. So they had a timeline they had to get done. And she came to me because she was having so much anger and resistance, even though she said, yes, you know, that she understood, you know, they were both in their early 80s and she understood why they had to move. But emotionally, she wasn't there, you know, emotionally. And part of that reason was not just the stuff that had to be sorted through, but it was where they raised their 3 kids. And their oldest son, when he was 13, came down with inoperable cancer. And he died with his mother holding him in his bedroom with hospice. And she said, if I leave this home, I'm betraying my son. So she really needed to work through some of her traumatic emotions that were connected to that home, and that was very, very challenging. You know, so we have to be prepared for feelings of grief and loss associated with the positive things, holidays, et cetera, but also other types of issues like the death of a loved one who died, in this case, by, you know, at home hospice. And so feelings are going to come up, feelings of powerless, feelings of hopelessness, feelings of regret. Why did I sign this contract? You know, can't we undo it? She became, in this case, very angry at her husband, feeling like he was undermining her son who had died, undermining her. It was very, very emotionally combustible. And we need to face that. And that's not always easy for people to do.
Got it. Yeah. Wow. Well, okay, so emotions come up. But how do we begin to deal with that? how do we deal with the sentimental attachments of our stuff?
And that's what you said in the opening, and I think it's so important to think about that. I have my grandmother's dishes, or I have my, these, cabinet that belonged to a great grandmother, or whatever it might be, and we act as if that piece of furniture embodies the essence of the individual. So we externalize, we, kind of project onto these things, furniture, kind of human characteristics, when what we have to do is to reverse that and see that cabinet as a cabinet. The dishes are dishes. But we need to talk about grandma. We need to talk, we need to bring her back into our heart, that she's not in that cabinet. She's not in that. I think you had the other day a pewter candlestick holder. That's not your grandmother. It was just something she had. And at the time, she may not have thought very much of it. But because we haven't really grieved the loss of that individual, it makes it very complicated. So we want to move all that stuff with us, which is impossible, and that's what letting go is about. We got to see the reality. And then, as I encouraged that woman I was telling you about earlier, she had to sit down and talk to her husband. She had to say, I'm resisting this because our son died here. She had, and it brought up that trauma, but she had to do that or they were going to be stuck, and things wouldn't move forward. So you got to talk to your loved one. You got to really first begin with yourself. And sometimes you need to seek some help for this, because it's not easy to move, as you were implying. And the other thing, as I was saying to you the other day, you got to have a plan, a reality. Here's the plan, and I have to stick to it. And that's not always to do. And the toughest part, as we were talking about earlier, was follow through. I got to follow through with it. Is this challenging? Absolutely it is. Is this heartbreaking at times? Absolutely it is. But if we feel our feelings in the moment, and talk to people, it's going to go a lot smoother. We can do this. We can do this.
Yeah. Well, you and I talked about, and I joke about it, but I've been thinking about it ever since we talked about it, Patrick, my Swedish grandmother's butter dish. So she had a butter dish, and I tried to get a hold of it, and I wasn't able to, or actually I kind of forgot, but it's this dish, and it's wood, and it has a top, and it's what my grandmother carried the butter in when she came from Sweden to America in steerage. And she kept her butter in there, and it's got this beautiful Swedish painting on around the edge, and there it sits. It doesn't go with my mom's decor. It has nothing to do with my decor. Nobody wants the butter dish, but we can't get rid of it because it represents grandma. Grandma's long gone. And then I think as you get older, I'm speaking for myself, you realize, man, life is short, and what was important, family, friends, it's very complicated. It gets very emotional. You're right. So we also asked or talked about, why are some things like collections or books so hard to get rid of? I know my husband's like a freak about hardback books. He acts like they're his best friends and he can't get rid of them. Talk to us about that.
Well, and I'm sure many of the participants on this Zoom meeting today are resonating with what you just said about books, particularly hardcover books. And one of the things we know in terms of the cluttering behavior is that one of the things that we tend to hold on to and have maybe thousands of them. And here in my dining room, which is now my office, I have, several bookcases filled with books. I'm a great lover of books. I see books as my friend, but friends don't betray me. Books do when I have too many of them. And one of the problems is it's because it's print, because those books, I can pick out a book by May Sarton right now and know I read that in the 1970s. And we associate these books with particular times in our lives. And we act as if I can't remember that time in my life without those books. The books are not the place card holders of time. There's something we've read or reread, and now we need to think about giving them away, donating them, sharing them with family members. Um, you know, um, Take them back to the library, or to a bookstore and see if you can't sell them. The idea is you can't carry 2,000 books with you. And many times, those of you who are social workers or nurses or doctors or whoever, professors, retired, you hold on to books because you think you're going to write a bestseller down the road. And you need to have all these books from when you were in college back in the 1950s or 60s. Now, we know, don't we, Trina and Dana, that that book is not going to happen. But what it is that we need to get back to the emotion. There's something that we need to talk about. There's something we have to share, and we might want to reminisce about a time in our life, but we don't need 300 books to support that. So what I say is, let's talk realistically about these books, look at them, and then decide what to do with them. Again, stick to a plan.
Good
The books
advice.
are not our life.
Good advice.
Go ahead.
Well, so when faced with a move, what is that overall impact or the overall vision of all that stuff that we logically know need to be discarded, saved, or donated? Like, how do we become aware of those barriers that really is this vision of overwhelm? I think that's, again, this is where people get stuck. They get stuck in their tracks and they're frozen.
That's and that's so incredibly important when you are contemplating a move. And what people do is, just like that woman I was talking about with her husband, they had signed this contract, they were going to go, and she froze. She literally stopped in her tracks. She could not face it. But what she was looking at was this, two-story house, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and she had a lot of stuff. And she had, as you were saying earlier, she had a lot of her parent stuff and grandparent stuff. So when she looked at it, it's that visual stimulation that can be so stressful. And keep in mind, she's 83 years old and her husband is in his 80s, and it's like, what are we going to do? And we are downsizing. So what she did, that visual stimulation really triggered enormous stress. And the word you used is overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, we often become paralyzed and we don't think we can proceed. And what I see with people is that we who want to help them have to help them unblur their vision. Don't picture the whole house. Picture this little quadrant in the dining room, or picture whatever, let's break it down to something that is more manageable. And then we can talk about it, but we want to talk and move at the same time. Talk and put it in a box at the same time, keep to the plan. I know I'm going over that, but stick to the plan. And it's very helpful having structure.
That's what we do so well, is when we have our consultations with people, whether they are contemplating a move in 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years, there is a very specific plan, and there's a timeline, and certain things happen in certain order. And we've got this because this is what we do. The cool thing is, if you stay tuned, and I don't even know if I shared that this is part 1 of a 3-part series this year. So today we're talking about the emotions. And then next month, we're going to talk about how do we truly physically deal with repurposing, recycling, reusing? Where do these things physically go? Now that we've gotten a hold of our emotions, where do they physically go? And then we're going to talk about how that rolls in part 3 to the overall plan and strategy of how do we incorporate this into our plan of the downsize move from A to Z, from we begin with closet in the first bedroom to we are happily ensconced in our new home. And so we're going to get into the meat of that, which is going to be great. But yeah, you're touching on a lot of things that are giving me goosebumps because it's real. I had Mrs. Smith. She actually lives in our neighborhood, and she she called me. She was so cute. She says, "Dana, this is Mrs. Smith, and I'd like you to come by my house for a visit." And I said, "Well, I would be pleased to. May I ask what we'll be speaking about so I can be best prepared for our visit?" And she said, "I'll tell you when you get here." So I showed up and I said, "Well, you've got me very curious. I can't wait to hear what you'd like to talk about." And she said, "I want to move. I plan to move, but I can't move until my daughter picks up my grand piano because it's very dear to me. I used to play in the symphony, and this is a very important piece of our family. And my daughter said she would pick it up." And I said, "Well, how long have you been talking about your daughter picking up the piano?" "About 7 years." And I said, "Mrs. Smith, do you really think your daughter's going to pick up that piano?" And she says, "Well, she better. I'm telling her she better pick it up this year." Well, Mrs. Smith ended up falling and injured herself, and she could not move back home. And the daughter never picked up the piano. And I'm just not sure if she might still be with us if she had been able to let go of that piano and all the things it represented in her past life, as you had mentioned, right, Patrick?
Right.
That
See,
identity of hers, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So
See, it's everything gets sprinkled with sentimentality,
Mhm.
and we act as if we can't remember our past unless we have a grand piano sitting in front of us. Well, as you can see, moving a grand piano ain't easy,
No.
and and waiting for someone to take it might not happen. But what we can do instead, and this is what I really want to stress with people, experience your grief around that,
Mhm.
that it represents a time, but you still can talk about that time in your life, talk with friends, talk with family, and if need be, talk to somebody, who does grief work, talk to Trina, it's important that we don't get ourselves locked in to this thought that says, I can't be myself without that thing or without that, butter dish. We have to unlock the key to that. And again, it
Or
goes back to unblur your vision.
And I feel like people are thinking that unless somebody is caring for that piano, I'm just using the piano as an example, that they are doing a disservice to the memory of either the loved one it represents or the time in their life that it represents. And so I think the next thing I'm going to ask you is really the beginning of the real answer, which is how would someone approach each space and all that it contains? Like how are we going to get through this? And you had mentioned the R word. Do you know what I'm
Well,
talking
yes, I do.
about? The R word.
You know, and what we have to do, is we have to take responsibility, for this decision that we are making. We need to think about what are the resources, that we can utilize to help us, kind of move through this space. Um, and again, it's about decision making as well. And one of the things that I recommend to people is, you know, when, give yourself time, you want to have some time for, this whole kind of pre-move and then the move itself and then the relocation. And what you can do is go through the stuff, look at it for a second or two, you know, um, and allow yourself to think, oh yes, I bought that back in 1973. You can do that. Have a friend there or somebody else that really understands you and your history. And and then once you do that, then let it go. See, I want to go back to let it go. Uh, that now it's going to go somewhere. It's going to go be donated or moved or whatever. Then look at the next thing in that part of the home. Look at the cabinet, look at the dishes, and let it go. We can do that. We don't have to rush through and get rid of things. What we want to do is, I've been living with this stuff for 50 years or more, and now I have, stuff from my parents or grandparents. Look at it, spend a couple seconds and then move on, you know, but
Yes,
talk about it,
yes.
talk about it,
We've
you
got
know.
even,
Um,
I think that if someone can follow even the simple exercise that we recommend, which is write down on a list items that had meaning to you, whether you're giving them away and you want the recipient to know that that sideboard was something that your great grandparents had from Germany from the 1890s, and the story behind it. Um, there's a process. Work with your team of experts that will allow you to take the time, like you said, Patrick, to talk about these things. And I will highly recommend to the viewers today that you might not want to rely, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but you might not want to rely on your family members. Sometimes there's these underlying tensions that rise up, and your adult children or sister or whomever may not have the patience to listen to you talk for 20 minutes about an item that is very dear to you. So sometimes it's actually better to work with a neutral third party that is going to sit and listen to the story and to allow you to have this goodbye time with these special items. And by the way, this doesn't mean you need to get rid of everything you love. We're just paring down for the next chapter, right? So we say, you know what, you love your great grandma's china set. Do you need servings for 24 people? Probably not, because you're moving to a very small home now. But maybe keep 6, keep 4, and eat off of them every day. Don't save them, use them, enjoy them. You know, um, anyway, so it does take a village. There are resources. We'll get more into that later on, but you don't have to go alone. You do not have to look at your home and just stop dead in your tracks because it's so overwhelming, because we will get you from overwhelmed to overjoyed. I promise. So the last thing I want to ask you, Patrick, before we dig in with Trina, is why is it so hard for us to ask for help? Why is this?
well, and that goes back to a strong value of independence and autonomy. A lot of us, including myself, think I can do everything. And even though I have a son who's 41, who is very willing, and he has said to me, Dad, if you have to move some things around to clean whatever, I'm 41. I can help you do that. You're 73. It might not be as easy for you. And I say, oh, no, no, I can do it, of course. And I have this kind of, image of myself at 40. But I have to say to myself, realistically, you are 33 years older than that. It's okay to ask for help. But what it does for some people, it triggers feelings of shame,
Mm,
because many of us were taught to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Don't give in to getting older, kind of fight that. 70 is not the new 50. I just want to say that. But what people get into is they want to control everything. And that's why they don't want to ask for help. Or when they do ask for help, they start trying to control that person who is there to help them, who knows how to do this.
mhm.
Uh, but they keep kind of criticizing them, or, getting in the way. And so what we have to do is, again, it's just this whole thing is about letting go. I have to let go of control. Let people who know how to move things move them. I don't have to do it at 73, you know. I can say instead, thank you. Thank you.
And you
Uh,
you said something so important because, and then what you shared last week, I wrote down and I kept it, which is if you need to let go of that control, you're not needing to let go totally. You can, you said
correct.
you can share the control. You can share the
Correct.
control. You're not losing control, but you can share it with your team. And that
Well, and
was,
I just want to say, absolutely, I think it's really important, just what we're doing here today with, Trina and you, Dana, is we're collaborating. We're bringing in our unique skills and talents and sharing them with the participants so that they might not have to suffer through this kind of move alone. We don't
Mhm.
have to be alone. We can
Yeah.
work together and collaborate.
Awesome. Wow, that's good stuff. I'm going to circle back at the very end and see if I missed anything with you, but I'm going to dig in with you, Trina, now and ask you right off the bat, why is it so natural for us people to resist change? What is wrong with us?
Good question. So first of all, we cling to what's familiar. And if you think about the word familiar, the word family, is part of it. And so we cling to what we know. And when we are going to move forward, it's an uprooting, and it can really trigger some senses of confusion. So, for example, I'll call this woman Fran to protect her privacy. So, a client of mine, Fran, turned 70 and knew she needed to move out of her house. It was too big, and she wanted to be closer to her grandkids. And they were out of state, and her grown daughter and son-in-law. And so she came to me as the date was getting closer and closer, and she came to me with high anxiety and really troubling insomnia. She was stressed, and so we really needed to look at what she needed to do to set up a plan, like you were saying, Dana and Patrick. And one of the analogies that I used with her and that I use with a lot of clients is, if you think about in your yard, in your garden, you've got this gorgeous succulent. And originally you put it somewhere where it was getting a lot of sun. It was the perfect spot. It was thriving. But since then, there's been some overgrown trees. Everything has kind of changed in the garden, and it's not a good place for it anymore. So we're going to transplant it. So we dig it up, we uproot it. And these little roots are dangling while we're getting it to its next destination. And if you think about with us too, our little vulnerability, our roots, we want to get to the next stage. But that interim is the most stressful time. So I tell my clients, in the interim, you've left A and you haven't gotten to B, so you haven't been transplanted. That's the most stressful time. That's where you're going to need a lot of support and a lot of tools. So, and that's where Patrick and I come in. And so when we get our plant, our little succulent, to the ideal place, and it gets its roots back down and it feels that soil, we pat it down and we tell it, okay, this is great. It has some new friends around it, and it's got full sun now. So it's, if the little succulent had known how much it had to look forward to, it would have just, been charging over. And same with us, we cling because we don't want our little roots to be hanging out in the breeze.
I'm just feeling those roots. I'm not, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, and you had mentioned something about, being in, well, denial. You talked about denial in a very meaningful way to me. Would you share that a little bit? And I don't know if that's part of the letting go problem or what.
So yeah, the letting go, when we're going to let go, we need to face an ending. And like Patrick said, we need to face reality. And facing endings, it is a death, even if it's not a person, it's a death of a chapter or a time in our life, or even a career, like all those books. I could tell some book stories, but we don't have time. Another webinar perhaps. But what I want to talk about is, and I have a little visual here, is the actual loss process, grief and loss. And so I'm going to put this up and I'll get out of the way in a second. So I draw this on my whiteboard board all the time at the office. Are we on? Let me see here.
Yep, you see it.
You see it clearly?
Mm-hmm.
And so we start with shock and disbelief. So this is if there is even, something that we didn't expect. Or even if we planned for a move, but we didn't expect to feel a lot of feelings. So we often have shock and disbelief first, and then we can move into sadness. Now, what I see with my female clients is they often go to sadness first and then some anger. My male clients are groomed to, big boys don't cry. Unfortunately, our society has done a number on men. And so they often go to the anger first, and then I help them dig down into the roots and get to the sadness. But here's where often clients that are referred to me by doctors and psychologists that know my work and know me, and I've had a lot of loss, so I know this terrain very well, is the bargaining stage. And the bargaining stage of the grief process and the letting go process is where we're saying over and over, if only ... if only I'd spent more time with mom, if only I had used those dishes that are so gorgeous that I didn't want to touch, if only. And we stay here fighting reality, and it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And we can camp a tent or pitch a tent and live there and not know there if we keep moving that there's positive places to go. Acceptance is next. And where we accept reality, we don't have to like it, but we accept it. And then we search for meaning in what happened. Even if it's a catastrophic loss. I've worked with clients that had catastrophic losses, and they established groups where they educated about suicide or talked to people that had gone through some of the same things they did in their family. So finding that meaning is really important.
Wow, I love that. I mean, that makes sense, and it resonates with me. I hope it resonates with the attendees today. You had a success story you had shared with me. Maybe you could share today, and I think his name was Jim.
Yes, so Jim came to me after his mother died, and he was in analysis paralysis. Just like Patrick said, frozen. The freeze response is a very common response if we are literally overwhelmed. And he was overwhelmed because when his mom died, he didn't have any siblings. He was an only child, and he had to clear out that whole house and sell it. And so of course I had Dana in my back pocket, but in the meantime, he had a lot of emotional work to do because he was literally frozen up in just overwhelm and sadness. So I helped him deal with his grief. We dug down into that. He had a lot of issues he needed to work through, get out of the way, so he could then start thinking about, what am I going to do about this house? And so also, like Patrick said, finding help, letting help in. And so we worked on a plan of him asking some of his closest friends to come on over. He'd get pizza, turn on some good music, and they would just start sort of flirting with the piles of stuff before they could even hire help, just do the basic. And he did that, and it built more intimacy with these friends. So he was really delighted with that. It was great. And so I also told him with some of these things, take photos of some of the memorabilia and write about it. Put it in a scrapbook, a photo album of some sort, have it on the coffee table so you can talk to friends and family about these things without having to dust them and schlep them around from move to move. So he did such a great job, and he got out of the freeze response, and he was able to really clear things. It was wonderful.
That's awesome. And then I know I actually know somebody who does a wonderful job of, what is she? Digital archiving. And so she can actually digitally do an archival compilation. I don't know the correct terminology of all these things, whatever these things are that you are letting go. And again, remember, you're going to be keeping a lot of these things. And I wanted to jump into, because I think you have a lot of meat to share, a lot of good stuff about your tips and suggestions. You had a number of suggestions of people struggling with change and with this letting go. And I think part of it, the first part was something about the things that bring you joy, right?
Yeah, and really, I mean, that's such a popular topic, is to take the object out and hold it near your heart and say, does this bring me joy? There's been some jokes about that. Don't do that with, spouses that you're having a few problems with, get help, work through the problems. But, with the objects, you bring them out and you check out, does this really bring me joy today? And it's so easy to cling to stuff, to cling to an identity or a time period or whatever. And it's all, as we talked about earlier, it's all represented in the stuff. And when we cling, it's really like this bargaining stage. It's exhausting. If you cling, if you feel your hands right now, it's hard to hold on to stuff. It takes a lot of energy. And when we can see, does this bring me joy? Do I still kind of love this? And if so, can I let it go? And wow, even just saying that, letting go, I just took a breath, because there is freedom. We create space, and then we can bring in and attract and bring in things that we resonate right now with, that will bring us joy. So that's so important to remember. And I have a couple of tips here. I've got my notes so I don't forget anything. Is when I work with people in transition processes, I remind them of how many obstacles they've overcome in their lives. We revisit, we talk. I help them get in touch with their power again, their strength again. And not to, and to be vulnerable is a gift, but we want to honor. And I created this, you can tell I'm an artist from my background, but I created this sculpture that my clients adore. And it's this little yin and yang character, little meditating character. And it really shows, it's got gems in each hand. It shows that there's gems on each side, the joys and the sorrows. And, all the opposites, talking versus listening, doing, working versus playing, all these things. And to just know that we can find our center and find that balance. And that's so, so important. And especially when we feel so off balance during change. The third thing, so I have a couple more tips, is if insomnia, anxiety, or depression persists, reach out ASAP for professional support and tools. If there is hoarding, your own or someone else's, that is impacting you because you have to deal with it or you're afraid for their safety and health, reach out for professional help. I have found that under hoarding is often huge trauma, and we don't want to take that on as lay people. So call in the professionals. And the next one was the photos of sentimental treasures. So we kind of covered that, and the coffee table and all that. And the fifth one is reach out to people that are savvy, like Miss Dana, that have so many resources that are tried and true, and she knows who is reliable and who's not. She's fantastic. And consider professional organizer. When I downsized some years ago, I had no idea how much a professional organizer would help. And Dana was telling me about move managers. I'd never heard the term. That was amazing. And so I have a little poem I wrote for y'all, if you want to hear it.
We do.
And I'm gonna real quickly, I know we're running, time is running.
You've got time. You've got time.
Okay, I want to offer my Tibetan chimes here just to, because we covered a lot. It's very exciting, but it's also anxiety producing. If any of you in attendance here are in the midst of a move, you may be the little roots upside down feeling, you know, disoriented with what's to come. So just know it will get easier. And so here we're just going to ground a little bit with these wonderful chimes and take a breath. And just feel your feet and feel your seat sitting on whatever you're sitting on. And my poem is to remember that caring support and tools can shine light on our paths so we can move forward with warm hands to hold as we gather energy and enthusiasm for our next chapter and our next heartfelt adventure, because where there's breath, there's life. Thank you.
Oh man, that was awesome. Oh, I got goosebumps. You guys are too much. I love you guys. I hope that people are having some ahas. I hope this is thought-provoking, and I hope that it's more than thought-provoking. I hope that today will be the step you needed to move forward into action. And to go back to what Patrick was saying, which was the plan. And to go back to what both Trina and Patrick said, which is you don't need to go it alone, and there is support. And that Trina especially talked about that meaning, that at the end of this cluttered tunnel, there's meaning. And I'll tell you, even this simple question that I've asked when I do focus groups to folks that have moved. And we sit down, and some people have moved many years ago. Some people, it's a new move, various ages, some singles, some couples. It's very interesting, male, female. And I say, what kept you moving forward? And it was usually the stuff. And then what would you like to tell people now that you wish you'd known then that you know now? It's like they should have done it sooner because we're so happy that we did it. But it's just that it's that line behind Trina's head that you've got to get through, and you can get through. And both Patrick and Trina have given us ideas and ways to consider getting through that. So if you want to dive deeper into this topic with either or both of today's amazing experts, local experts, you can go through me and we'll make sure that you get in touch with them, and we'll set up a consultation. I'm happy to do a consultation with you. We can do one in conjunction with the team, whatever you like, however we can help you, let me know. In the follow-up email that we'll send out, we will make sure that you have all of their contact information, and they may send some additional information out that they want to make sure that you have after today. But I want to see if there's any questions. Now would be the time if you would like to type any questions down in the little Q&A bubbles below you. I see there might be, let's see. Sonia says, hi, Trina. So there you go. Let's see. I'm reading this one. Keep the memory, let go of the things. Took pictures of it, wrote up his words about talking about it. Interim step. It's an interim step of ripping off the Band-Aid. So I think somebody was sharing their thoughts and their experiences with us today. And so they were in agreement with the things that you both had shared. If there are any other questions, we'll take those now. And if not, if you think of questions after the fact, again, just reach out. And again, next month, first Wednesday of the month, we're going to be talking about the actual nuts and bolts of, all right, We've embraced it. We're sharing the control. We're gonna let go of some of these things because we know we have to, because we're moving from our 3,500 square foot home to a smaller, more manageable home. And we're doing this and we're proactive about it, but what the heck, we've got to get rid of this stuff. We're going to talk about how do we go through and actually do it, and how do we figure out what might be able to go to an auction house, to be consigned, to be donated. How do we repurpose, reuse, recycle these things? And we may be even getting into the nitty gritty of what our perceived emotional value is of that item may not equal the public's perception of what that item's value is, because we're looking at it through our memories, they're looking at it through their pocketbooks. And so we'll get into the nitty gritty and the meat of that next month. And so in the meantime, if you want to see the topics coming up down the road for the rest of the year, simply visit savvyseniorsLiving.com and you can see the whole lineup for the rest of 2021. And now I'm going to just share my screen. So let's see if I can technologically do this here and sign off with reminding you about our amazing sponsors, because without them, we could not continue to bring these great topics and great panels to you. So here we go. All right, it worked. There you go. All right, well then we are, oh my goodness, all of a sudden we have lots of questions. We've got a few moments, so let's see if we can get to these. All right, let's see. I've got a comment, very helpful to think about a plan and a team. I got a little anxious just considering all the stuff in my garage and closets, but I can get busy on a plan now. Awesome. Okay, somebody wants to talk about clothing no one wants to wear anymore, and we're going to get into that, Judy, next month. This is really good. Thank you, Marion. So somebody doesn't have a question, but they want to share a comment, which is it's really important that the younger generation, and I guess that's the children, the adult children perhaps of the attendees today, understand this thought process. And you're making me think that, Marianne, maybe I need to do a seminar for the adult children to maybe educate them a little more about this, because I'm an adult child, but I'm not quite there yet. But because this is what I do, I totally get it. And she goes on to say it's taken her a while for her to now understand the thinking of an older generation. And it's important for us to have the tools to assist our parents and friends to direct them and help them move forward, which allows us to do the same. Thank you. That's a great comment.
I want to add something, Dana, and Patrick and I could probably both team up on this, is to teach people how to do active listening. So that when folks are struggling with whatever the next steps are, that we don't jump into problem solving right away, that we listen with our hearts and really create a sacred space to hear them, to mirror what they're saying, validate, and empathize. Those are just gifts we can give each other.
Awesome. All right. And then one other person said, speaking from the place of an adult child, I love the idea of a seminar directed towards them. So that I guess that should be in the works. But anyway, hopefully everyone got a little something from today's topic. And my golly, what time is it here? Look at that. We made it under an hour. That's great. So thank you, Trina. Thank you, Patrick. So appreciate all that you gave today and all that you shared, and love that you're on the team. And we'll make sure that everybody gets your contact information. And so without further ado, I wish everyone a beautiful, bright Wednesday, and we will see you again next month. Take care, everyone.
Bye.